Xtalks connects professionals in the life science, medical device, and food industries with useful content like webinars, job openings, articles, and virtual meetings to help you succeed in your career. This food industry-focused podcast brings together some of our editorial staff to share insights into the latest B2B industry news to help keep you up to date.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Xtalks Food Podcast. I'm Sydney Perlmutter, Senior Food Industry Journalist and Webinar Moderator at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm joined by Aisha Rashid and Vera Kovacevic. Thanks for coming today. So I'm going to start us off with a really interesting conceptual idea that's sort of coming into the mainstream these days, which is edible food packaging. And as you can imagine, this trend is brought on by a variety of reasons, so I'll get into those in a bit. So in recent years, the food industry has faced growing scrutiny over its environmental impact, particularly concerning the use of plastic packaging. The scrutiny has sparked significant interest and investment in alternative packaging solutions, with edible food packaging emerging as a particularly innovative and sustainable option. So I'll talk a little bit about the rise of it and different technologies and the types of edible packaging that are available. So the urgency to transition away from plastic waste is very, very critical. That can't be understated. Plastic packaging, which was a once hailed convenience, has become a global environmental dilemma, and it contributes, as we know, to pollution of the oceans and landscapes, harming wildlife and taking centuries to decompose, if ever. The shift towards edible and biodegradable food packaging represents a proactive step in addressing these environmental challenges. Consumers' growing awareness and concern for the environment and its sustainability have significantly fueled this shift, driving demand for packaging solutions that are not only safe for consumption, but also minimize ecological footprints. And edible food packaging, which can be made from natural and often upcycled ingredients, offers a promising path forward by providing a waste-free alternative that could potentially revolutionize how we store, transport, and consume food products. So edible food packaging incorporates a variety of materials and technologies, each tailored to different types of food and consumer needs. So the most common materials used include proteins, lipid, and polysaccharides. And these materials can be derived from a range of sources like seaweed, milk protein, like casein, and plant starches. These materials are not only edible, but can also be designed to enhance food preservation, improving the product's shelf life and nutritional value. One of the more exciting developments in this arena is the creation of films and coatings that are directly applied to food items. And these films can serve multiple functions, from acting as moisture barriers to enhancing the food's flavor. So for example, a protein-based film might be used to lock in moisture in fresh produce, while a lipid-based coating could provide a water-resistant layer for items that are prone to spoilage. Beyond these innovations, researchers are also exploring the use of 3D printing technology to create customized edible packaging solutions. And this approach holds the potential for creating packaging that is not only functional and edible, but is also customizable to specific dietary requirements and preferences. So I'll talk about some of the companies that are sort of pioneering, edible food packaging solutions, and they each contribute this unique innovations to the market. The first company is called Foodberry, and its product, or its main, product, is called Foodberries. So they're an innovative, sustainable coating technology designed to mimic the protective qualities of fruit skins and peels. So this technology offers a barrier against moisture while preserving the nutritional value and enhancing the flavor of food items. Crafted from a blend of nutrient-rich and vegetable fibers, phytonutrients, and minerals, Foodberries provide a non-permeable plant-based protective layer for various foods. Next is Notpla, and this is a London-based startup. It's making waves with its edible water pods made from seaweed, and its flagship product, Uho, encapsulates water or other beverages in a clear membrane-like sphere made from seaweed extract. Lastly, Incredible Eats is making stride with its edible cutlery, offering a practical and eco-friendly alternative to plastic utensils. They're made from wheat, corn, and oat fibers. Their spoons, forks, and knives can withstand hot and cold foods and come in a variety of flavors. Now, the development and adoption of edible food packaging represents a significant leap forward in the effort to combat plastic waste and promote sustainability in the food industry. The edible packaging market is estimated to be worth approximately $2.8 billion will be worth that by 2030, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 14.31%. And as technology advances and consumer demand for eco-friendly products grows, the market for edible packaging is set to expand, offering new opportunities for innovation and environmental stewardship. And the companies leading this charge not only are reimagining how we think about packaging, but are also setting the stage for a future where food and packaging are in harmony with nature rather than at odds with it. So I wanted to ask you guys, and maybe I should have asked you before I delved into this story, but what was the first thing that came to mind when you heard edible food packaging? And did any of the companies and the technologies that I mentioned, did your thought about it match up with that?
So when I think about edible food packaging, I'm thinking about alternatives to stuff like saran wrap or to boxes that you get takeout in. But I didn't quite see that. But what really stood out to me was the edible utensils. I think that's ingenious, and I'm very excited to see what that's all about. And that didn't even come to mind. So yeah, it's interesting how we might be thinking of one thing, but we didn't think of something else. And yeah, cutlery is a huge form of waste. It's a good thing that a lot of restaurants and food places will ask if you need cutlery, but it's still thrown in, a lot of the times. And so I think that's going to be super cool. Although at the same time, I'm getting an image of a soggy straw, so paper-based straws. So I hope they're a bit better than that. But yeah, I am so excited about this, and I feel it's about time. And I know it takes time for the technology and things to develop, but I think again, it's about time that we see these kinds of innovations, and I am so excited about them. And yeah, so that's what came to my mind. And then I was pleasantly surprised to learn about the edible utensils, you can eat your fork.
Yeah, when I think of edible food packaging, it kind of reminded me of your story, Sydney, about why Babel cheese is wrapped in wax, but that was not edible. But some people eat the wax thinking it's edible, right? So that's what it reminded me of. But the Foodberries that you talked about and the featured image of that article, that's what I think of when I think of edible food packaging. It looks like a thick flour paste. It comes in different colors. It looks like it would keep in moisture, and it just actually looks yummy too. So it's a good thickness, maybe a few millimeters as well. So that's what I think of. I'm surprised that we haven't seen more edible food packaging. I think the industry is leaning more towards biodegradable food packaging versus edible food packaging, just because I think edible food packaging is probably more expensive to implement, but then also consumer preferences, right? Are people comfortable with eating an edible food packaging? Maybe some companies are worried, how would consumers perceive this? Would they question the safety of that material? Would they question what it is? And so I think for that reason, many food companies opt for biodegradable food packaging for the sustainability reasons. But yeah, I think edible food packaging would be more widespread by now if it's not the concern about the consumer perception about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was also very pleasantly surprised to learn about edible utensils. I think, and I had previously heard about edible straws, and I guess a straw is a utensil as well. I think it's such a brilliant idea, and yeah, I am always frustrated to see individually packaged forks, knives, spoons with, wrapped in plastic with the little napkin in them, or just handed out left, right, and center, even if you don't need them. So this would be a really, awesome solution to that. I definitely see your point, Vera, that it would be expensive to implement. And I think that's just the, sad reality and truth about more sustainable options just in general, like regardless of industry. And I think if the demand is truly there, and if consumers are truly concerned and this is what they want, they'll likely be willing to pay the price. It's really a matter of whether the industry is wanting to make this shift. In terms of the not the company that I mentioned, Notpla, that makes edible water pods from seaweed. I remember seeing, years ago, sort of conceptually, like little balls of water or liquids encased in this clear like membrane, and I'm like, oh, that's just that's some like gimmicky type thing, but it's a real thing. And water would be a really big industry. The bottled water industry would be a big one to tackle when it comes to plastic waste, of course, because and I have my own opinions on plastic waste when it comes to water, but that would be really cool. It would definitely be the biggest shift, I think. People going from drinking from bottles to now these little like clear plastic, or not plastic, but membrane little spheres or whatever. But yeah, it's a real thing. So yeah, of the ones that I mentioned, I mean, which ones? I guess for Aisha and I, it was the edible cutlery, but Vera, did Foodberry, Notpla, or Incredible Eats stand out to you the most?
I think it was Foodberry, just because of the image. Like, I actually saw an image of it, and it looked really yummy to me. So that one is my favorite. And I'm not sure if did they talk about what it tastes like, or they were just mainly describing what it's made from, but I'd be really interested to try it. I mean, it looks good. I like how it comes in different colors too.
I had the same question because the distinction here is between, like Vera, you were saying, biodegradable versus something that's edible. So are these edible products made to be palatable, or it's just the fact that, oh, if you eat it, it's okay, you won't be harmed, or are they meant to actually be actively eaten?
I believe that they are meant to be eaten. I think maybe not all of these forms of edible packaging are, but I think Foodberry designs their products so that they are meant to be eaten. But I realize too that, not all food is compatible with, or would be compatible with edible food packaging. I mean, these companies are obviously selective about which foods they choose to encase in edible food packaging. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think of foods that this wouldn't really be compatible with. And then I also thought of, even though the packaging to the foods are edible, don't those have to be encased in something, at least during storage or transportation? Like, did that issue come to mind for you guys?
What if the packaging itself gets contaminated and then you're eating that? So
it could be a safety issue, which I'm just thinking about now.
That's a good point. And I wonder, like, what the use settings would be. Is it more in restaurants where you may be able to have more of like a safety, or like in the packaging you're handing it to the customer, or is it in grocery stores as well, where of course you have a lot more food handling happening, and so more potential for contamination and things like that? That's a good point, to consider. Also, Vera, I remember this actually reminds me of Sydney. I think you covered a story about like the stickers that are put on produce.
Oh, yeah.
The edible stickers. So that kind of reminded me of that, and how Vera was like, I don't want to eat anything stuck on my food, even if it's edible. So the Foodberry is kind of reminiscent, because it's actually like, on the skin of like, I don't know, a fruit or a vegetable. So that kind of reminded me of that.
I'm positive they've probably thought about these safety
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't obviously get into each company and technology too deeply, but at the moment, I believe these companies are just working with other food companies to help them provide packaging solutions. I'm not sure if we'll see, direct to consumer products from these companies, but we will definitely see. I mean, food packaging has been a problem for a really long time. So I appreciate the efforts that these companies are making. Even if they come with some potential issues, there's nothing that food tech can't resolve, I think. But I'm not sure if they can resolve a potential upcoming chocolate shortage. So we're nearing Easter, and there's a concerning chocolate shortage that is threatening to cast a shadow over this year's celebrations. And this shortage is attributed to a combination of factors, as all food shortages are, including poor cocoa harvests in West Africa, and it's poised to impact chocolate lovers worldwide. So let's talk about the root of the shortage. So for the past 3 years, the cocoa industry has grappled with underwhelming harvests, significantly driving up prices. And these price hikes have put immense pressure on cocoa processors, critical in converting cocoa beans into cocoa butter and liquor for global chocolate production. In Ghana and Ivory Coast, which together account for 60% of the world's cocoa output, some processing plants are struggling to afford beans. And this has led to reduced processing or complete halts in production. In Ivory Coast alone, home to half of global cocoa supply, a leading state-run producer has ceased buying beans, processing only existing stock, which is highlighting the severity of this crisis. So chocolate makers are definitely feeling the pinch. And with the likelihood of a fourth consecutive poor growing season, chocolate manufacturers like Hershey and Mondelez, which are the owners of Cadbury, are forced to raise prices to offset raising cocoa costs. And this move is a direct response to the staggering 78% year-over-year drop in chocolate sourcing. Michelle Buck, who's the president and CEO of Hershey, announced in a statement that the company anticipates modest growth in earnings this year, attributing this to the surge in prices. However, she emphasized our strong marketing plans, innovation, and brand investments will drive top-line growth and meet consumers' evolving needs, as she likely had to say and wants to believe. So climate change is only exacerbating these challenges, of course. Cocoa trees, highly sensitive to climate variations, are struggling with disease due to last season's heavy rainfall, and they're also now facing the harsh conditions of this year's El Nino. The narrow geographical band conducive to cocoa growth, primarily in West African nations, is under siege by changing weather patterns threatening the global cocoa supply. And with cocoa prices breaking records and the global supply deficit projected to increase by 405% from the 2022-2023 season to this season, the situation is looking bleak. And high prices and shrinking supplies mean manufacturers must continue to hike prices while cutting back on production, which is affecting both the industry and, of course, consumers as well. So due to the rising costs, some analysts predict a decrease in consumer demand for chocolate, which is a luxury often purchased on impulse. Inflation and high prices force consumers to rethink such purchases. In response, some candy companies are downsizing their products or reducing cocoa content, attempting to navigate these turbulent times. So an example of this is Hershey's newest addition to its Kit Kat lineup. It's dubbed the chocolate frosted donut, and this Kit Kat variation is only half coated in chocolate, whereas typical Kit Kats are fully encompassed in chocolate. So despite these challenges, companies like Hershey remain optimistic, though, focusing on marketing, innovation, and brand investments to drive growth. And new product adaptations exemplify how companies are creatively adjusting to these constraints. And as the 2024 Easter season draws near, the chocolate shortage presents a complex challenge for both the industry and chocolate enthusiasts. Climate change, economic pressures, and the delicate balance of global cocoa production play pivotal roles in shaping the future of chocolate. So for consumers, the joy of indulging in Easter chocolates may come with a higher price tag, prompting a reflection on the sustainability and future of this beloved treat. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I seldom think about the volatility, I guess, of cocoa trees and the whole production that it takes to make a chocolate bar when I'm eating chocolate. And coffee for that matter too, since we talk about those as very kind of volatile crops. And I guess this story is a little bit more sensational as we're approaching a season where people are eating a lot more chocolate. But what do you make of this chocolate shortage? Like, do you think that we will be seeing this more long term, and it's not just a now thing because of these unstable weather patterns, or do you think that it'll likely pass?
I think it will likely pass, right? I think it varies year by year, just like most food products, and especially the fact that whenever you have like a food ingredient that's sourced from like 1 to 3 countries, it can vary year by year, right? The supply. I'm actually shocked that 2 countries together account for 60% of the world's cocoa output. That's really shocking to me, considering like how much chocolate we consume. So when that's the case, I think that, honestly, I think the industry should be kind of familiar with like the supply not being consistent.
Yeah, I've been hearing, rumblings of this for the past several years. And I think, Sydney, you've covered this in the past too, on Easter especially, this issue being highlighted. And I think Vera is more optimistic than I am, but I'm actually quite concerned because this seems to be such a recurring thing. And, it might just get worse because our climate conditions are more volatile than ever. And that's what, again, like Vera, how you said, what happens when you have production concentrated in such, in just 2 countries. And so if anything happens there, your whole supply chain is affected, and your end product and all of that, the whole market is affected. And I actually watched a documentary or a series episode about chocolate production in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, and how exploitive it is. In terms of like the labor exploitation that goes on there, and just how the farmers are, making pennies. And of course, as we know, with a lot of food crops grown in the third world or developing countries, just what the plight is. And so, when you reach for that chocolate bar, it's so true that we are so far removed from how it's made and what goes into it and who the people are behind it and their suffering. And, so when I hear like a big corporation saying, oh, well, it's going to put a dent in our profits, it's like I don't know what to say to that, because they have been squeezing every single penny from these producers in those countries. And so I don't feel bad for them at all. I feel bad for the farmers in those countries, because it's like, that's their livelihood. And then here as consumers, we'll be bummed out that we might not have enough chocolate, at Easter. But I think it puts into perspective like the whole cycle of production and beginning at the root. The problems now with climate change and this and that, but there are a lot more issues, systemic issues around that as well.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I feel a bit in the middle of both of you. I think we should and can be optimistic. And it also made me think about, alternatives, or whether there are different technologies in the works to replicate natural cocoa production or growth. I mean, we've seen this with obviously like meat, dairy, and even coffee, I believe, like lab grown coffee. And I wonder if we'll start to see it in the future with cocoa, just because of these uncontrollable weather events that are affecting these types of crops. And chocolate, I don't predict will be, going away, or the demand for chocolate will be going away anytime soon, even though it is not a necessity. It is a luxury that, we all want to partake in. And so just due to the demand, I think that, whether naturally or otherwise, I think that the demand will likely always be kept up with. Whether the prices will lower, I don't know, or even stay the same, I'm not too sure. But I'm certainly hoping that, for the farmers' sakes especially, that weather conditions become a little bit more stable. But of course, I hate to be so pessimistic, but it's likely a result of human impacted, climate change, and these weather events are, seems like a little bit too late now. It's just completely out of pretty much everyone's hands as individuals. But for the farmers' sake, I really hope that, they continue to be treated well, and that they continue to be able to have a product, to sell. And we see this sort of thing sort of play out in a different way with things like oil. I mean, oil is we're only able to extract it from certain countries. And I think if anywhere in North America could grow cocoa trees, wouldn't be an issue at all. I'm sure the same experts...
They would have already done it.
Have they?
No, they would have.
Oh, of course, yes. I was like, they have? Wow, that's crazy.
Down in Florida, no.
Right next to the oranges, and then
next to the oranges.
Yeah, and then that's how they make Terry's chocolate oranges. It's the perfect. Yeah.
There you go.
But regardless, you can celebrate Easter, of course, without chocolate. Just a luxury. But yes, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that production can improve. But
also, there's the issue of over farming as well. Like, you hear about a lot of these big corporations just destroying the environment, and the topsoil is eroding and things like that. So even apart from climate change, I think the practices of big corporations in terms of how they cultivate a lot of these crops is also, and the heavy use of pesticides and all of that also factors into what kind, it could also affect crops in the long term, which might be a factor at play here as well. So
it's cocoa is such a interesting and different type of crop, because you harvest the beans from the trees, and with other produce or other fruits and vegetables, okay, they just get shipped off around the world, but the beans are never being sold. They have to be transformed into butter and whatever else, or another liquid. And then those are transformed into various types of chocolate. It's such a long production process from farm to, product. So I don't know. They're such a unique crop. And obviously not everyone and not every climate can grow it. And there's so many different factors to sort of put the blame on here, including, you're right, the companies themselves that sell various types of chocolate. So bit of a bummer. At Easter we'll see, or sorry, not at Easter, but at Thanksgiving, turkey shortage, I'm sure. Any holiday that focuses on or has a staple food, there'll likely be a shortage. And by shortage, for consumers, that just means, increased prices. And they suck it up. I mean, what consumers want, they'll get somehow. Yeah. All right, well, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Food Podcast. If you like today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
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 Thanks for listening to the Xtalks Food Industry Podcast. If you enjoyed our discussions today, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to subscribe in order to be notified when a new episode is released. To join in on the discussion, you can find Xtalks on social media, email podcast@xtalks.com, or comment on the articles directly. Links are in the show description. Take a moment to join our community at Xtalks.com to get access to everything we have to offer, including webinars, job listings, virtual meetings, articles, and more. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are those of the speakers sharing them. They should not be taken as professional advice and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.